All of our volunteers. Everybody's a volunteer here.
Okay, and as you might have guessed, we have a different program than usual this morning. And on this day, we are appreciating one really important and amazing part of that web of interdependence, and that is our ordained Sangha here at the center, with an emphasis on our nuns, because we tend to give a lot of attention and appreciation to our Geshis, although I will be speaking about them a little bit. And now I'm going to turn it all over to Venerable Kondo.
Oh, I was hoping for more announcements. like 30 or 40 minutes. Okay, so we're going to start with prayers, and they will be in English, I assure you, all of them. Except, I meant the mantras, sorry. So if you would, we're going to start with 7 Shakyamuni Buddha mantras, and then 8 Chenrezig mantras and 7 Tara mantras, right? Isn't it? Oh, well, no, let's just do 3 Shakyamuni Buddha mantras. You take us out. You lead. You can start. Yeah. Taya tao mune mune maha munae soha. Taya tao mune mune maha munae soha. Yata mune mune maha mune soha. And if you page 27 in the gold prayer book, and I'm not quite sure where it is in the white prayer book, we're going to do the 7-limb prayer. It's one of the few I have memorized. Page.
Oh, that's right next to where we do everything else. So
Okay. Sorry. Okay. I found it on 27. So, okay, 35 is good. 27 or 35, whichever floats your boat. It's good to have things repeated. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of offerings, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions, communities since the beginninglessly time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. Dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. Now, I do need to turn to page 27 because we're going to do the short mandala offering, and we're going to do both verses because I really like the second verse. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. The objects of my attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, strangers, and my body, wealth, and enjoyments. Without any sense of loss, I offer this collection. Please accept it with pleasure and bless me with freedom from the 3 poisons. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay. Let's see. So originally I was going to talk for 10 or 15 minutes, and then it unexpectedly morphed into 30 or 40. So we may be all going home very early. So we'll see what happens. Oh, right. Bye. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hang on a second. How many kids do we have in here? Well, you're not a kid anymore, but you should come up here, Evelyn. And the 2 of you, would you come here? Come, 2 of you? Yeah. Evelyn, I need you. Just for a second. Here you go. Here we go. There you go. One for your sister. Whoops. Oh, yeah, there. You saw the chocolate. You decided to come, huh? Okay. Whoops.
So you and your children are welcome to come with me. I'm going to meet in the preschool room and lead a Dharma discussion with the parents. This is the last of our third family Dharma discussions. If you do not wish to join your children, then you can stay in here with your children. And Kandala is the best at being mindful around children. So don't worry about it if they make noise.
Yeah,
You're welcome to be
It'll
anywhere.
be fine.
Yeah.
It will be fine. Okay, so somebody beat me to it, but I just wanted everybody to know I did my hair for this occasion. Also, there are really 4 nuns here. Now, one many of you haven't met because Venerable Tendrin is on 4-year teaching exile in Florida, and we miss her greatly. But there's Venerable Tendrin, Venerable Lamo, Venerable Chukyi, and me. So it's really odd that I'm the only one up here today because I'm the naughty nun. I mean, it is absolutely, I will prove it. So I may tell some stories about myself, but I'm not going to bore you with the story about how I became a nun. Everybody has heard this year after year after year, and even I'm tired of it. So my topic is going to be the Vinaya, which is the rule book for being a nun. It's the guidelines, the vows, the rules for being a proper monastic, both individually and as part of the monastic community, and as members of the larger community with lay people. There are 3 baskets of the Buddha's teachings. The sutras, the discourses of the Buddha, Abhidharma, the philosophy, and the Vinaya. So, obviously, Buddhism thinks that the Vinaya is somewhat important. And this is I think I'll tell you, this is a quote. But the important part of this for me that I think the Vinaya will emphasize, is the interrelatedness of ordained Sangha and the lay community or householders. We're interdependent, we're interconnected, and we're interrelated. There's an interrelatedness about us all. And I would like to represent that. There's a practice that's done at Sravasti Abbey, which when people make, where's my girlfriend? Hello? There she is, okay. When people make offerings to the Sangha at the end of, whether it be food or other things for their requisites, on multiple occasions, this is a practice that they do. And I think I would like to do it today because it tremendously represents our interrelatedness. So would you please, one of our wonderful, wonderful people is going to read it for us, that first paragraph. Would you just read it? Yeah? And she's going to bring you a mic.
Okay, I'll squeeze past you, my friend. Wonderful, wonderful. Wow, I'm liking this.
Okay, so.
I need to volunteer more often.
Okay. Yeah, it's like an ice cream cone, so.
Yeah, that close?
Yeah, great.
That
Perfect.
intimate and then close. Offering food to the Sangha. With a mind that takes delight in giving, I offer these requisites to the Sangha and the community. Through my offering, may they have the food they need to sustain their Dharma practice. They are genuine Dharma friends who encourage, support, and inspire me along my path. May they become realized practitioners and skilled teachers who will guide us on the path. I rejoice at creating great merit by offering to those intent on virtue and dedicate this for the awakening of all sentient beings. Through my generosity, may we have all the conducive circumstances to develop heartfelt love, compassion, and altruism for each other and to realize the ultimate nature of reality.
And the Sangha's response: your generosity is inspiring, and we are humbled by your faith in the three jewels. We will endeavor to keep our precepts as best as we can, to live simply, to cultivate equanimity, love, compassion, and joy, and to realize the ultimate nature so that we can repay your kindness in sustaining our lives. Although we are not perfect, we will do our best to be worthy of your offering. Together we will create peace in a chaotic world. But I decided I would reverse this. I'm going to start with a small offering to the community. And it's in a basket, you notice, the 3 baskets, no, just in case you hadn't gotten it. So this is the typical thing. Originally, I was going to do cake. And then I realized that doing cake meant that lay people had to do work to serve the cake. So it dawned on me that this was a more perfect thing to do. So Donna, would you start the chocolate around? And this is like Sogue. There can't be any left over. So take more than one because it's not a crowded room. So I'm going to try and talk not very skillfully because I've not studied the Dharma, the Vinaya, in great depth. My being able to even talk about the Vinaya at all is actually an example of the support the center has offered. A year ago, January, there was a 3-week course, 2.5-week course on the Vinaya in the West. And it was the first time a course had been held on the Vinaya for Western nuns that weren't going through an ordination process since 1996. And there were nuns from every tradition, Theravadan and Mahayana. There was no distinction. And there were over, I think, 70 nuns from all over the world. And there was a faculty of 6 nuns, including Thutpan Chodron, but from a temple in Taiwan. So a lot of what I'm sharing is a consequence of my interconnectedness with you and your support, because you helped me pay for the flight fare. I probably could have gone without that, but it would have been much more difficult. So I'm really, really grateful. And that's where I found out what a naughty nun I am. So I kind of had a clue, but it became real clear. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the Vinaya and its function, and then a little bit about how it operates today in the world. The Vinaya, which for, I believe, monks who are fully ordained is 253. For nuns, we get 360. I'm a novice nun, which means I have 36. Don't ask me what they are. I appall other nuns that are much more diligent than I am, that I have not memorized them. And there's no full ordination in the Tibetan tradition. There are many fully ordained nuns in our tradition, but they go outside our tradition and ordain in the Dharmagupta, which is the Chinese tradition, one of the Chinese traditions of the Vinaya. The Karmapa seems to be working diligently on changing that, and we'll see. But for me, 36 is enough, although it was pointed out to me that even though I have 36, I'm supposed to keep all 363. Oh well. But the Vinaya did not occur because a group of monks got together in a committee and decided to write down a bunch of rules. It just didn't happen that way. There were no rules. It was, you went to the Buddha, he said, get rid of everything. You went to the carnal grounds, you got some rags, you put on your robes, and then you followed the Buddha around, and you pretty much gave up everything. So how the Vinaya happened was people would come, whether it be other monks or lay people, would come to the Buddha, and they would say, hey, so-and-so went home to sleep, to visit his family, and a woman in the village wanted to have a baby, so he slept with her. Do you think that's a good idea? I mean, this is literally like one of the stories, and not quite, and the Buddha kind of rarely answered. He said, let me think about it. And then he came back and he said, nah, this is not a good idea. If you're giving up everything, you're giving up that, and you will, and even made rules about not spending, being under the same roof with a woman overnight. Now that is Now that is shifted in modern times, not to being able to, but at the very least, having separate rooms. So, but that's how the Vinaya, occurred. And so there were incidents there was about handling money, there was about travel, and there was about, when to eat, when to not eat. But the function of the Vinaya has, the Vinaya has three functions. And all of them are protections. It's, if one ordains with the view that the vows are a deprivation, it's going to be really hard. If one ordains with the view that the vows are protections, then it's still really hard. But you're not as apt, I found I'm not as apt to be resentful. So the protections are for the protection of the Sangha, the protection of my mind, the development of my mind. The second protection is for harmony within the Sangha community itself. And the third is for harmony with the larger community. So things like women not traveling alone, is one of the vows. 2,600 years ago, it was about safety. It was about safety. Now, so there's many kind of, so if you look at every one of them, there is a very, very well-considered rationale that makes a great deal of sense in terms of either my protecting my mind, my protecting the harmony in the Sangha community, and protecting harmony with the larger community. As some people, I say this freely, as some people in, there's a 12-step program where, they say, be careful, you may be the only copy of the big book someone ever reads, because of your actions. And one of the important things about being Sangha is that my behavior in the community if it disturbs someone's mind stream and it prevents them from being connected in a positive way to the Dharma, I mean, it's still a karmic connection, then I've done harm. And so many of the guidelines are about that. Now, and I'll talk a little bit about the Vinaya in the modern world, but the Buddha said this was when he was sick and not going to be long for this world as his followers knew him. O bhikkhus, after my parinirvana, you should revere and honor the precepts of the Pratimoksha. Treat them as a light which you have discovered in the dark, or as a poor man would treat a treasure he had found. You should know that they are your chief guide, and there should be no difference in your observation of them from when I yet remained in the world. And these are the opening words of the discourse of the teaching bequeathed by the Buddha. And what does it accomplish? From the Buddha's time down to the present, it has been found that a careful application of the Vinayas principles by a bhikkhu or bhikshuni in their life promotes their practice and understanding of the Dharma. Vinaya leads to restraint to the absence of remorse to joy, joy to delight, delight to tranquility, tranquility leads to happiness, happiness to collectedness, collectedness to knowledge, and a vision of the truly existent. I'm just glad they haven't kicked me out of the club yet, you know. So there's a lot of talk, not a lot, but there's a lot of the Vinaya that I break on a regular basis. Like, I drive a car. I'm never supposed to drive a car. Now, if you're a very, very highly respected teacher with a lot of support, that might be a freedom that you can have, but often other Sangha are driving the car for you, so somebody's driving the car. I eat afternoon on a regular basis. I will today. I visited my brother. He had a big house. I had my own bedroom, but we were under the same roof. I mean, you know, so. But the thing I want to point out is just because I go out without my robes on. I'm never supposed to go out of the house without my robes on. I'm never supposed to go out of the house without my robes on. And I do it on a regular basis. It's really annoying when I have to do yard work to do it in robes. But sometimes I just cheat and I go out without my robes on. If they could just put an elastic waistband on them, you know? They do at Sravasti Abbey. They have a really great design down. Matter of fact, I said to Tutpan Shodran one day, how do you always look so neat? You know, because she is a very I mean, when you want to see the Vinaya, look at Tutpan Shodran, okay? So, and she says, I cheat. And she takes her Zen off. And she says, I can't stand anything tight around my waist. And so she has her shantab, which has 4 pleats in it. She has an elastic waist and the pleats are sewn in. What?
Yeah, the shantab is the skirt.
The skirt that you wear. And I said, okay. And so, well, you can't tug in this if you got to, you know. So she wears it out. Well, you're not supposed to do that either. Right. So she always has her Zen on. And I said, Oh, way to go, girl. So, but I'm not, I'm not sure one of the vows is 4 pleats in your shantab. When they were getting them out of the carnal ground, you didn't always get enough fabric to do that. But one of the things that I think is some of the thoughts have been, well, you change it so it's not an infraction. And I'm going to tell a story in a minute about that. But even when I go out of the house without my robes, when I eat at the wrong time of day, when I handle money, when I watch Netflix, and I'm not watching a Dharma show, thank you very much. My new addiction was Lucifer. I mean, you have to admire a devil that decides to give up punishing people and go to Hollywood and opens a nightclub. He doesn't want to punish people anymore. And he ends up connected. So so you have to appreciate somebody that says this. He's assisting this detective who thinks he's a royal pain and says, "What can you do to help me?" And he looks at her and he says, "Well, I am very good at finding bad people and punishing them." And for me, it's a Dharma experience because he grows in compassion. He starts caring. I mean, but so that's my new addiction. Well, that is, Geshe-la would not say that was Dharma. I try to do it after my commitments, but nonetheless. But I don't pretend I'm not doing an infringement. I do not pretend that I still acknowledge, I always think twice when I think, no, I'm just going to put on these maroon pants and go out in my maroon t-shirt and my maroon pants to Trader Joe's. So, a long time ago, there was an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous tree. And it just, its branches were huge. There's actually a maple tree in the center of Raleigh that reminds me of this tree. The trunk was, probably 5 or 6 feet in diameter. The leaves were beautiful. The flowers smelled wonderful. The flowers, people came from all over to picnic under it. Animals played in the branches. It was just absolutely gorgeous. And this tree lived for many, many centuries, protecting and providing comfort to people. But as is inherent in things, tastes changed. And it became not stylish to have trees that were just allowed to grow the way they grow. And so there kind of be a contingent of people that said, we really need to shape this tree up. It's not being micromanaged. It's not being micromanaged. So finally they got out their loppers and trimmers and they just cut, and fruits fell and limbs fell and leaves fell. And finally when they were done, it was like a perfect cube, kind of like boxwoods, the way when boxwoods are perfectly trimmed. And they were just, oh, this is so much better. And the people that used to come and be in the shade of the tree and the animals stopped coming were, oh, this is just so sad. And, the pruners rolled their eyes and said, well, they're just ignorant. Well, within a couple of months, the tree died. So, if you want Dharma, you need healthy Sangha. And if you want healthy Sangha, you need a healthy Vinaya. And the Vinaya is a living, breathing organism that affects my life and affects your life. Thich Nhat Hanh in his wisdom has not changed any of the Vinaya, but he's talked about what does it mean to really observe the Vinaya in this day and age. And So an example would be not driving a car. Well, I can create an important errand that I have to go do at the drop of a hat. I'm studying, I'm working on something, and suddenly I have this very important errand to do. Well, it's rarely particularly important. I just don't want to be doing what I'm doing at the moment. When I'm able to say to myself, you don't need to do this. You don't need to get in the car again today. You know, you've done what you needed to do. That, for me, is a way of respecting and keeping the vow of not driving. I don't have a choice. I have to drive. Unless I want to learn how to use the bus system and take 75 hours to do anything, and I don't want to do that. So those are the ways in which, like not wearing my robes. The number of people that come up to me and ask me, is there a place to practice around here? You know, I don't know if any of them ever show up here. They may or they may not. The number of people that come up and say, can I just talk to you? And there's somebody that's going through something in their life. I go to Trader Joe's a lot. It's one of my, I have three favorite places for food and goodies, and it's Costco, Trader Joe's, and Aldi's. And they're all on my ant track. They're all very close to each other. And several years ago, a couple of years ago, a gentleman who worked at Trader Joe's who was incredibly well loved, a gentleman named Chris, who was a member here, died. And we did, the family requested that we do medicine Buddha practice here, and we did. And there must have been 50 people from Trader Joe's here that night. Well, I go to this day in Trader Joe's, people come up and say to me, oh, that was so wonderful. You know, it was one of the few pujas I led. And I'm able to say to people, well, thank you so much, but let's just take a second and wish Chris happiness wherever he is. You know? So the blessings of that connection continue. But I will tell a funny story. I was in my robes one day at Trader Joe's, and I was going to buy somebody a bottle of wine as a thank you gift, because they drank wine. It wasn't one of their vows. I'm in the wine section, and I realized I haven't had a glass of wine in 36 years. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I thought, well, they really like beer. I'll get them some beer. And they had individual cans of beer, and I'm looking at the beer, and I'm thinking, I don't have a clue what kind of beer. So I got pretty cans. Pretty bottles, pretty cans. And then I looked down at myself, and I realized I'm in my robes, and I've been in the beer and wine aisle for 20 minutes. Oh, you know, as Rabina would say, eons of purification for that one. My intention was good. It was generous, but so. But the Vinaya can be lived today. You know, it can be lived today in its absolute fullness as the Buddha intended. And it is only when that is done that there will be a vibrant Dharma. At least that's what the Buddha said. As long as there is strong Sangha, there will be, the Dharma will flourish. And you can't have a strong Sangha without a tremendous commitment to the Vinaya. So, and here are the consequences. Several years ago, I lived in near Cameron Village, and I was walking down the street, and I had taken a break from, it was back when I studied more, and I had taken a break. This being 70, I'm cutting myself all sorts of slack. I was going to go get my senior coffee at McDonald's, which I enjoyed doing in the afternoon. And this big pickup truck pulls up and rolls down the window, and the guy waves me over, and there's a gun rack. There aren't any guns on it, but there's a gun rack and fishing poles on the gun rack and stuff. This guy waves me over and hands me $40. And I said, "Can I help you, sir?" I figured he was lost, he wanted directions or whatever. And he hands me $40. And I said, "Well, whatever." And he said, no, I want you to take it. I love giving money to Buddhist monastics. So, paid for my senior coffee and more. But actually, so one day I played hooky and everybody's heard this, many people heard this from me. One day I played hooky from the center on a Sunday. And of course I went to one of my first favorite places, Costco, got gas, went into Costco. And this Vietnamese woman comes up to me and hands me goes like this, hands me $100. And I say, no, ma'am, you don't have to. She said, I want to. And I said, and Geshe had, about a month before, given me the assignment to raise a lot of money, like $8,000 for a puja he wanted to do at Sarah. He wanted the Kadampa Center's community to sponsor at Sarah J. And I was like, how am I going to do this? Yeah. And so I said to the woman, I told the woman, I said, I told her the story about doing this and needing to do this, and that I was feeling so discouraged and so overwhelmed by it. But this $100, I was going to use this, the first $100 towards, towards raising money for this puja. And this gave me the confidence that it could happen. So I go to my next favorite place, Trader Joe's. Pull into the parking lot. I get out of the car. She's at Trader Joe's too. She says to me, "Oh, I'm really glad you're here. I want to give you more money. Will you take a check?" And I said, "Ma'am, you don't, but sure." And she wrote me a check for $1,000. If I hadn't had my robes on, neither of those things would have happened. So, the Buddha's right. Wear my robes all the time. Never questioned that he was right. I just didn't want to do it. So, and that is a lifelong challenge. Will be a lifelong challenge with me with the Vinaya, because as a friend of mine said when I thought of ordaining, he said, "Well, what you're interested in is none of this and none of that, not none do this, none do that." And I will struggle with that for the rest of my life. Because I like the none of this and none of that thing, but I don't really like the none do this, none do that stuff all the time. So I believe that the Vinaya is well. I think it's a really, really important question for the West now, because to truly live the Vinaya requires a great deal of support. I'm very fortunate that when I was retired, I was able to have a pension. Lamala, had a pension. But for younger people to ordain and be able to get their requisites. So I just set an aspiration that, as the Dharma develops in the West, that and an acknowledgement of the three baskets of the Dharma, which is the sutras, the Abhidharma, the philosophy, and the Vinaya, become vibrant, so that the gift that the West has received, or the ripening of many, 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 many millions of karmic seeds, positive karmic seeds, continues to be true. So I went to Sravasti Abbey, and I referred to it as going to nun reform school. I came back slightly reformed, but it rapidly wore off. But one of the great things that happened there was that, when I first ordained, my first thought was, is this belt going to, not belt, this string that holds up the shantab, is it going to come undone and my robe's going to fall down? So, and that took a few months and that went away. But I did have this notion that, the Sangha squad one day was going to show up at the door, knock on the door and say, we've gotten a bad report, we want the robes back. And the gift of Sravasti Abbey and that community of nuns from all over the world and was that I have absolute confidence that no matter what, whether or not I'm in robes will always be my decision. And that for today I'm really greatly blessed that as lopsidedly as I do it, maroon is right where I'm supposed to be. And Geshe-la has great patience with it. And this is what the Vinaya, this is a story he told. He said there was a very highly realized Lama that decided he wanted to go to hell to help the sentient beings there, relieve the suffering of the sentient beings there. And so he decided to walk to hell, took the road to hell. Well, he couldn't get to hell because it was so packed with other monks on the road. But the monks were actually, so he said, but they weren't going to hell to receive. He said, these monks that were on this road that prevented this Lama from going to hell to relieve the suffering of sentient beings, he said, on one side of the road is the Sangha and the Vinaya. He said, on the other side of the road are householders or lay people. He said, the monks on the road to hell, he said, have none of the responsibilities of householders. Their requisites are taken care of. He said, but they're also not keeping the Vinaya. He said, and that is a very, very dangerous place to be. And then he looked at me. And I said, okay. It was one of his little pep talks for me to ante up a little more. So I'm very grateful for the gentleness which he tells me that. So here's, and here's, like, you're not supposed to eat standing up. Well, have you ever seen me around a bowl of potato chips? Anybody that's seen me around a bowl of potato chips knows that this is almost impossible. But nonetheless, I used to knit to listen to teachings because keeping my hands busy helps me listen more. Well, I can't knit as Sangha in teachings, Now, and the reason I can't isn't because knitting is bad, it's because who might see it and be offended by it and it disturb their mind stream. It's not about properness. I swim, but I swim in the West, If I was in Vietnam, to swim as a nun would be so appalling to the community that I would have to think twice about it, So, and again, it's not that it's not an attraction. So So that's all she wrote. And thanks for listening. I don't know how much time. I didn't even look at my watch, so I think we're on target.
Yeah.
Are we?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm done.
Is it possible to ask a question?
Sure.
It's possible to not have the answer.
So I'm curious, and I know you don't want to retell your story of how or why you became a nun, but
Sorry.
I took the Discovering Buddhism course 2003, 2004,
Mhm.
and you and both of our other nuns were also in that group. Was there something that happened that was a collective experience for you that led to these decisions to be ordained? And how much do you think Venerable Rabina's and
What?
how much do you think our exposure and our love for Venerable Rabina had to do with those decisions? I mean, before I met Rabina, I had never met a Tibetan, a nun, in the Buddhist tradition.
Okay, so this can be real brief. First of all, I only went to Discovering Buddhism twice because it interfered with my AA home group meeting on Monday nights, and I wasn't about to give that up back then. So I sit here before you as an ordained Sangha, and I never completed Discovering Buddhism. So there you go. So you better take everything I say with a grain of salt. That's number one. Number two, I heard Rabina in 2001 for the first time. I came with a neighbor. She never came back. I never left. She was my iron hook. I mean, what was I thinking? I took refuge. I took the Bodhisattva vows. I mean, all within a week. You know. And why I ordained, I still wake up some mornings wondering whose idea was this. I mean, I'm honest, guys. I mean, you know, it's true. You know, especially, I have to treat stores. I'm not a clothing hog, but I love colors. So I have to treat stores as museums. You know. Is in 2013, I woke up from a nap, and I decided what I want to do with my rest of my life. I was not quite 64 at the time, and I decided that the only thing I really wanted to do with the rest of my life was to learn to become more wisely kind. And I thought, becoming a nun is probably the best way to keep myself out of trouble, do less harm in the world at the very least, and possibly work on that. And the same thing continues to be true today. And nuns come in all, and that's the other thing I learned at Shavasti, nuns come in all sizes and shapes. They come, there's short ones and there's tall ones, there's really strict ones and there's loosey-goosey ones like me, and and just like the Buddha had 84,000 teachings, I believe that people, Sangha, who are really attempting to live up to their robes, let's say, each of us might offer something different to different people. You know, there's people that wouldn't come to me, you know, if their life depended on it, but would go to Venerable Tenjin or Chukyi at the drop of a hat. There's people that might come to me that don't feel comfortable going to them. And so hopefully each of us is value added to the Sangha community. Thanks. Does that?
Thank you for your candor, and thank you for being here and being you.
Thanks. I almost wore a T-shirt somebody recently gave me that I loved, and I think I will wear it another day. And it says, "Same samsara, different day." Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our Geshis, and then we have a few members who are going to speak a little bit about their experience with having Sangha here and how, in their experience, it's beneficial. And one of the things that I wrote a little note on here really quick when Venerable Kondo mentioned that it's important to have a strong Sangha, and that one of the methods of having a strong Sangha is to have a strong Vinaya. But another way that we have a strong Sangha is to have a strong lay community who appreciate and support them, which is why we have our Sangha Appreciation Day once a year. Okay, so we're, every time I think about it, I think about how lucky we are. We're really quite unusual within the FPMT family in having so many ordained Sangha. We have currently with us 4 nuns who ordained from within our ranks, and then the first member who ordained within our ranks was Venerable Chuni, who died about 10 years ago. So we've been really quite fortunate to have so many ordained Sangha. About our Geshis. So the title Geshi, Ge means virtue, Shi means knowing. So Geshi means one who knows virtue, and I think our Geshis are living examples of that. And a Geshi, the Geshi is a title that indicates that they've completed a degree, an academic degree in Buddhism. Geshe Gelik has a Larampa Geshi degree, and it's the very highest rank possible. It takes many years of vigorous study and debate to become a Geshi, a minimum of 17 years of study for any level of Geshi, and then the best students have the opportunity to take an exam that qualifies them for the Laram degree. So that's a total of 23 years of study for a Larampa Geshi. And then they also spend a year studying in a tantric college. And among the 4 lineages in Tibetan Buddhism, our lineage, the Gelug tradition, has a very strong emphasis on philosophy and study. And our 2 Geshis complement each other very well. Geshe Gelik is really focused on study and philosophy, and Geshe Sangpo is very focused on ritual. And I think it's really easy not to understand, because we just see him here in this context, what an amazing treasure Geshe Sangpo is. His expertise in ritual is so high that Lama Zopa Rinpoche calls him regularly for advice on how to do ritual. When he was at Sarijay, if His Holiness came to the monastery and performed a puja, Geshe Sangpo was the one in charge of organizing all that and making sure that everything was in place. So, we come and say, can you teach us how to do water bowls? And he's so kind and so gracious about it, but we could ask him anything having to do with Tibetan ritual, and he would be able to answer it for us. So that's really quite amazing. And they speak English. In a lot of FPMT centers, the Geshe does not speak the local language, and they need to have a translator. So, and they spent, Geshe Sangpo and Geshe Gelik both spent many years working very hard and studying English so that they can teach us in great detail. And one of the things that I particularly find precious about Geshe Sangpo, especially because he is an expert in ritual where there's, this needs to be this way and this needs to be that way. And he's very clear and he can be very precise. But he's also very flexible. And he really emphasizes that what's important when you're doing any kind of ritual is our mind. And he's done this twice in 2 recent classes when he was teaching how to do water bowls and when he was teaching how to do mandalas. And, doing the water bowl offerings, there's a ritual about it. You start from left to right. You're supposed to say Om Ahum. This is water. This is incense, all those things. With the mandala, it's even more complex. If you're doing the mandala set with several tiers and you're offering the elephant and the horse and, all these things, and you're supposed to put the rice in certain ways. And he says, don't worry about those things. That's not the important thing. The important thing is what's in your mind and what's in your heart. And so even though he knows how to do all those details, and in certain contexts it would be very important, he understands that for us, that the important thing is what's in our heart, and he emphasizes that so much. And I really find that so important because it's very easy, I think especially as Westerners, coming into something new, it's very easy to sort of get focused on, I've got to do this the right way, or, well, let me see. For me, I get a little OCD about that sometimes. So it's so helpful to have permission and kind of like a reminder, this is not about where exactly this piece of rice needs to be. It's about what's in your heart. So that's something I really appreciate about him, and I encourage anyone to come to any of his practices or any other of the special teachings that he does here. And both of our Geshis also do a lot of things behind the scenes. We see them here, for certain times of the week, but behind the scenes, they teach classes to the nuns. They meet with students to offer spiritual advice. They do house blessings. They work with the, Geshe Sangpo works with the family program a lot, and particularly with the family Dharma camp. They both give advice to Kadampa Center leadership when we request it. They don't stick their nose in, but which is also a great practice of humility on their part, that they don't tell us how to run things, but they're very happy to advise when we ask it of them. And so that's a very interesting balance when you're in leadership, to remember to come to them for advice. They also network quite a bit with the Tibetan community and Geshe Sangpo is very active in this in our state and surrounding states. Geshe Sangpo is actually the president of the Tibetan Association right now. Both of them did a lot of, communicate a lot with His Holiness's office here in the United States, which is how we were able to invite His Holiness to come and how we got and how His Holiness came to accept that invitation. And unfortunately, things happened that he wasn't able to come, but those are connections that they have that really are beneficial to our center. And Geshe Sangpo also is responsible for the monks in their house, House 26A, at Sarajay Monastery. There's still about 24 monks who live there, and he's still their teacher and responsible for their welfare. Although there's also Geshe Pema who's there who takes care of them. It's Geshe Pema, right? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So I have a question. If you hear somebody say Geshe-la, who do you think about? Yeah. Geshe-la actually doesn't mean Geshe Gelik. We tend to think of him as Geshe-la because we had just Geshe Gelik here for a lot of years, and so we called him Geshe-la. But Geshe-la, the la at the end of the term Geshe, is just an added layer of respect. So you would refer to a Geshe, if you're speaking to him directly, you would say Geshe Gelik or Geshe-la. So we can actually refer to Geshe Sangpo also as Geshe-la if you're addressing him. And that's, and that little law of respect is also something that we offer to nuns or anybody who is ordained. So we would refer to Venerable Kondo as either Venerable Kondo or Kondola. And it's always good to keep that little bit of respect in there. really quickly how our Geshis came to us. Geshe Gelik was born in Sikkim, and he went to the Sarah J when he was about 6 or 7 years old, and began his 30-plus years of study there. And then we requested a resident teacher. We requested Lama Zopa Rinpoche to appoint a resident teacher for us. He went to Sarah J, asked Khensa Rinpoche to recommend some students or Geshis, and he observed quite a few of them debating, and on the basis of their debating, as well as other advice that he got from people who knew these students very well, he selected Geshe Gelik for us. And I just think about him coming here all by himself, traveling all that way on the plane by himself, and then coming here and being separated from a very unique type of community that he had grown up with and known for 30 years, where he was surrounded by other monks who really understood his journey and his commitment to the Dharma. And then he comes in and lands among all these ignorant Westerners. And he didn't, in those first years, he didn't even have an international telephone or Skype to talk to his friends and monastic family back home. So he really made quite a sacrifice to come be with us. Geshe Sangpo was born in Tibet, and he escaped there at the age of 11. He crossed the Himalayan mountains on foot in a trip that took 21 days. They had to travel at night and sleep during the daytime in order not to be seen by Chinese soldiers, and they slept in the snow. Their guide abandoned them. They didn't have enough food for the length of the trip that they had, because their guide basically lied to their parents about how much food they would need, so they kind of had to scramble and survive all that. And they weren't really dressed for the severe weather, but he finally made it into Nepal and made his way down to Bodh Gaya, and he had an uncle who was in House 26A at Sarah J, and they connected in Bodh Gaya, and he made it the rest of the way there. You'll also notice here that we have two ways of prostrating with our Sangha when they come in. Geshe Gelik departs from tradition because he's so humble, and he requests that we prostrate with him when he comes in, whereas the tradition is to wait until the teacher is seated and then prostrate. And Khensa Rinpoche, his teacher, when he was here the last time, spoke. He was quite moved about how humble Geshe is. And Geshe Sangpo allows us to have the merit of prostrating to him. So we have, again, this contrast in their styles and the ways that they help us and teach us. Yes? No.
Geshe Sangpo.
We
prostrate to the teachings.
I apologize if
I
that was
just
the
meant, I think it's a
terminology.
really
If that was the
important-
words I just used, then I
but
apologize. Yes, no, thank you.
I just
Thank
think
you.
it's a really important
We wait until they're
distinction
seated to prostrate, and then we're prostrating. Thank you.
to what they represent.
Yeah.
So-
That was
sorry
a
to
verbal slip.
apologize
No,
for being-
excellent for you to correct me on that.
I don't
because
mean to be
No,
micromanaging.
we're not prostrating to them. We're prostrating after they're seated. And it's out of respect for the teachings and the Buddhas and for our own humbleness. Yeah. And another thing that the teachers do that's from tradition is and expressing, they don't come and say, I'm the greatest, I know everything. Traditionally, we have to request the teachings. That's one reason we drive the Geshe here. We're asking him to come and teach for us, and so we do everything we can to make it possible. I've heard that the Karmapa, when he teaches in the West, he'll, at the beginning, he'll get to a point and he say, well, this is the part where I'm supposed to say I don't know anything, but I'm not going to do that because half of you are going to get up and leave. So you'll often hear Geshe Gelik say, I don't really know any of this. I don't know what I'm talking about. And of course he knows what he's talking about. But this is a traditional, it's a practice for them also to be humble and not to set themselves up as great masters. And another part of that, on Sundays when you're in the lobby, before a Geshe arrives, you'll hear somebody bang the gong, and we'll flip the lights off and on again as a reminder to come into the Gampa. And that's not just us being controlling and OCD, except maybe me sometimes, but the real reason for it is, traditionally, and out of respect for the Geshis, it's a good practice to be here in the Kadampa, not just a minute before he comes in, but 2 or 3 minutes ahead of time, not socializing out in the lobby, but here in the Kadampa, quieting our minds and really getting ready to hear the teachings. So that's why we do that on Sunday mornings. And then you will know that we say the 7 Tara mantras at most of our practices for the long, happy, healthy lives of our Geshis. And this came about, we had requested from their teacher, Gensa Rinpoche, a long life prayer for them, which is actually, in our ignorance, that's very unusual for a teacher at the level of the Geshe. That's more for higher lamas. And so Gensa Rinpoche's advice for us was, as a community, to do 200,000 Tara mantras every year. And so we do that, and we started a counter on the website last year, and we go way over 200,000 as a group, but it's nice that we're fulfilling his wishes by doing that. So I guess the last thing I want to say is just, think a little bit about how amazing it is that we have teachers of this caliber, Tibetan Geshis, with so much training right here in little old Raleigh, in the middle of the Bible Belt. What are the odds? Well, it's not the odds, it's karma. It's our karma that we have all created to have them here. So we should rejoice not just that we have our 2 Geshis and our wonderful nuns, but also rejoice in our karma that we created the conditions for them to be here. So thank you. And we're going to take, we've got about half a dozen different students who are going to talk just briefly, each one of them, about what it is meant for them individually to have our Sangha here. And we're going to start with Hemant Pandya, who is a longtime center member and has been, he teaches Discovering Buddhism, and he's been on the board for many years. He's a past president of the board, and he's quite a wonderful guy. Take it away, Hemant.
Thank you, Donna. So this morning I was thinking about how do I commemorate and celebrate this Sangha Day. And then as I was thinking, I'm thinking we talk about the 3 jewels all the time, right? Triple gem, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And there's a lot of analogy, like they say, if Buddha is the doctor and Dharma is the medicine, then certainly Sangha are the caregivers or the nurses. And so then I started thinking about, how, again, as she said, how lucky we are that in this Bible Belt, we have this Dharma place. And we can really come and rejoice the fact that we have ordained nuns and we have all the Geshe-las here. So today, I want to just give my personal appreciation for the nuns. I call them the silent strength of Kadampa Center. Okay. I was just thinking about the confidence I have when I come here to Kadampa Center that somebody will lead the chants. The confidence I have that most of the time somebody will be there at the door smiling. Somebody will lead the Geshe-la inside. Okay? And then when you think about each one of them, we have Chant Master, does a wonderful job, by the way, in Tibetan and in English, right? And then we think about Kandola. You can see very, very easily, right? She not only teaches, but she has a subtle way of a humor in it you can relate to. It's a wonderful way of teaching, at least in my view. You can relate to her. And she very clearly says there are people that are attracted to her. Some people go to somebody else. But we have this opportunity. Then you look at Chokila, for example. She silently sits next to Geshe-la. And no matter how thick the book is, Geshe-la is reading. And he says, isn't that what it means? Can you read? And immediately she not only knows the source, she knows what to say. And she gently translates that to us for our benefit. And we may not realize that, but that's an immense benefit when you're reading some really advanced teachings and somebody is able to identify exactly where Geshe-la is, follow Geshe-la, and then able to translate that so that we can understand. So many benefits of having nuns you can see. So I was writing down, I wrote some notes this morning, and as she was speaking, I'm jotting down what I'm going to say. And I was thinking about just a few things that came to my mind. we already talked about leading and supporting daily dharma. We have a chant master that does it, right? We have ensured prayers are regularly made for people that are sick and need it. We have a prayer list. That's an amazing thing. Love and support not only to the members that come here, but for the community. They are counselors in many ways. You heard her say today, she walks into the Trader Joe's, people come and talk to her. Okay, so that's the power of nuns we have. They also do things like mindfully doing animal liberation project. We have prison project. They not only represent Dharma in the center, but as she said very clearly, she represents that in the community. Okay, or they do, right? And then lastly, to me, they exemplify the Dharma. And at least they are teaching us, while Vinaya is very difficult, at least they are practicing and they're living in the vows as much as they can. But it's a teaching for us that it's a difficult process, but it can be maintained and the value of it. So that's another way to look at it. Okay? So I want to give an example of how they touched me personally. Okay? And we just recently, a bunch of us from here went to India and went to some auspicious places, including Sarah J. Monastery, and wound up in Bodh Gaya and in Nalanda. And obviously, we are a little tourist excited to go to Sarah J, and we sit down and see the monks, and you start to feel a little humble. But you know what was really amazing to me is to see the nuns really living some of their vows by practicing. It was very inspiring for me to see in the morning, and you would hear a little noise, and I'm here waking up for coffee, and you see them practicing, right? And then we say, oh my, they really follow this so nicely. And then little by just here and there, we would have this one-on-ones. Obviously, 14 days, we would have connection one-on-one, walking together, going some places, or, hey, Hemant, how are you doing? And just having that conversation. And there were just little tidbits that really, really was very inspiring for me. And I'll give you an example. When we were in Bodh Gaya, we went to Rajgiri, where, of course, Buddha gave the teaching of the Heart Sutra, the profound nature of wisdom. And it was really amazing to see them just sitting down and started doing the prayers. And one by one, we all joined in. We went to Nalanda, the same thing. We were going room by room. Oh, this is where Atisha was. Right here is Atisha. Right? Here's where Shantideva. We say prayers of dedication of Shantideva all the time on Sunday. But we were in the room where Shantideva himself studied. And guess what? The nuns took out their prayer books. Let's do the dedication. Bam. Now it was not just an auspicious place, it became a pilgrimage because it really enhanced my own practice in understanding of it, that this is the place where it really happened. And here are nuns leading us, right? I can go on and on and on. There were just so many different things, even with the Venerable Kandola. May it be going for a cup of tea or looking for a restaurant or looking for rosaries or malas. We had our nice little connections also. And just the little ways that they inspire me. And so I just wanted to say in the end that, like all of us, I have this deep gratitude for your inspiring examples, the vows that they hold, the dedication, the joyful effort. And so today, the quiet strength, I have a lighter heart, I have a happier heart, and my heart is filled with joy because they are here. So thank you.
And now our center manager, Jill's going to have a couple of words.
Just one quick thing I wanted to tell you about the word Geshe-la that she was explaining. One of our members, Christine, was somewhere where there were like 30 Geshes on a stage. And that's you? That's my story. I was gonna okay, then I'll wait. I won't say it because it was so cute. I thought it was Christine. No. I want you to do it because it's much sweeter. So I grew up Lutheran, like many my friends here did. So I just thought, I was thinking about last night that we had no model for nuns. There was just nothing. And so the only reference we had is when our hearts got broken, we used to say, we're going to become Lutheran nuns. And that was we didn't know what that meant, but because we had no reference point. So the only ones that I really remember is Julie Andrews and Sally Fields. That ages me. And Whoopi Goldberg, Like we just didn't have a point of it, and our Catholic friends had a little more reference. It might have been a little negative, but some of it. So that's all we had. So when I started coming here in 2008, it was just amazing. Like I felt an immediate karmic connection, which is a little odd when you think about having no understanding of it and then feeling just swooped in. And Venerable Tendrin was the first one. She was the only nun that was ordained when I was here. And it got to be amusing because I would always try to offer her something, and it was, I don't know quite what the Vinaya was, but I made it uncomfortable for her. And I was offering things that she couldn't accept. So finally one day I offered her, she was like, "Oh, my back." And I said, "Yoga." And so I started helping her learn some yoga at someone's home in the back here. So then we started meeting our visiting teachers. So then there's Venerable Robina, quite a force, who's coming soon, Venerable Amy, Venerable Wangmo, is that the right name? The first one who became a Geshe? Yeah. Yeah, Geshe Wangmo, sorry. I'm so used to saying Venerable with the nun's name. So Geshe Wangmo, that was very inspiring. And then our own friends started ordaining. So then one by one, Venerable Lamo and Venerable Chuki and then Venerable Kondo. So it was very exciting for us as women to experience this as it just started blossoming. So for me, it was just this great blossoming. And then during our first LOP retreat, I was sitting behind maybe like 30 nuns. And then I looked at the monks and the nuns and thought, I counted up a quick idea of maybe how long they'd ordained, and it was about 1,000 years of experience. It was extremely powerful for me. I see that in Tom's eyes right there. It was powerful. These people are all practicing and devoted to Rinpoche. So if I had to sum it all up in one word, I would say inspired. So that's how I feel about our nuns, is that I'm inspired by them, by their service, their devotion, and their practice. I live in awe of all the nuns that I've met through the years and want to learn every day how to serve them more fully, not just expecting them to serve me. It's not an easy life, and the decision to ordain for a nun in the West is difficult. We all pray that change